right? So the fastest way to tune this particular one would be to go back to the application, find out what the application was doing. They were counting to see if they should do something. Well, rather than counting to see if you should do it, just try to do it. I would take that 300 seconds of elapsed time in the TK prof and turn it into 0 seconds. It would just disappear. So the best way to tune this one might be remove the query. Or if the query was really necessary, probably indexing that column is the right way to tune this particular query. It would make it run incredibly fast. But the right answer, what is the best way? None of us can answer this right now. It's one of those two, probably, right? We might go back to the application and find out that they're doing something completely wrong, and we have to change everything. In general, it's going to be more complex. I took a simple example that everybody could understand, right? So you could look at that, you could see those numbers, you could understand those numbers. But the process is always going to be the same. You're going to get some facts. You're going to infer more facts. On Ask Tom, you always see the published answer, and it looks perfect most of the times. You see a well-detailed question, and then you see my answer to it. What you didn't see was the 2 or 3 days of back and forth with me pulling very slowly more and more information out of the person asking the question. You know, because they don't think of the boundary conditions. They don't think of what happens if. I infer facts. I look at their query or their attempt and go, well, based on what you're doing, I have to assume that there's a one-to-one relationship between these two tables. Can you confirm that? Right? We're building up this huge context, so by the time you see the question and answer, it looks like everybody writes really good questions, and you can get sensible answers from that. But it took a long time to build that. So you get facts, infer more facts, and validate those. Build that context. Where in the world am I? What am I trying to do? If I'm an interactive application, first rows optimization might be something I want set in my session. If I'm a batch process, all rows optimization, the default in Oracle, might be what I want. I need to know Oracle though, because if I was just an application developer who started programming against Oracle and did not know that all rows optimization was the default, when I run that big multi-table join, Oracle's going to full scan, hash join all over the place. And I'm going to be very upset, frustrated. And I'm going to start hinting queries. When in fact, all I really needed to do was alter my session, set the optimizer mode to first rows 25. That way the optimizer would know I was most interested in getting the first 25 records as soon as possible. And it would start doing the right thing. So build your context. Make sure you have that list of prerequisites that Bryn Llewellyn supplied. Now you can start ruling things out. This is good. Ruling things out is almost as good as ruling something in. If you have a list of 500 reasons why something might be happening, and you get the facts, you infer more facts, you build the context, you can start going through that list and drawing lines through things and saying, this is not the cause, this will not help, we shouldn't do this. The example here was, I ruled out a table reorganization because I knew the data, I knew how it was packed, I knew that a reorg would do nothing for us. So I was able to draw a line through that. The shorter the list of possible solutions we can start to arrive at, the better. Because if we rule out half of our ideas, we're left with a much smaller list of things to debate, to think about. So what was the point of this? Okay. The point of this was we have to continuously rethink things. I've been working at Oracle for over 16 years now. In the 16 years, there's been 15 versions of the database. When I first joined, version 6 was production. Today, 11G release 2 is production. If you count all the major releases, 15 of them. It's changed a little bit over time. What we do today in 2009 is so different from what we did in 1993 when I joined that we can't even compare the two. If you were to take a DBA from the year 1993 and put them in the data center today, their head would spin around, right? Think about 1993. In 1993, 1994, version 7.1 arrives on the scene. 7.1 gave us parallel query for the first time. I was doing a benchmark for a customer. They gave me 18 days. 18 days, that's a big long period of time to load, index, and query their data set. And the reason they gave me 18 days, they were a Sybase customer. They knew it would take them at least that long in order to do that in Sybase. They gave me the data. Took a little less than 18 days, but it took as many days. You know how big the data set was? It was 100 gigabytes. I bet you this laptop, it's not mine, but I bet you this laptop has more than 100 gigabytes of storage on it. We buy terabytes of storage these days. But in 1994, 100 gigabytes in an Oracle database was huge. In 1997, version 8 was coming out. Version 8 introduced partitioning. When that was happening, loading and indexing and querying a terabyte of data in an Oracle database was such a big deal, this is just 12 years ago, that we would put out a press release. Hey, we loaded a terabyte of data into the database, and it didn't break it. It worked. Today, a terabyte database is small. It is not a large Oracle database by any means. Tens to hundreds of terabytes. Tens of terabytes is sort of medium. Hundreds of terabytes into thousands of terabytes, you're on large now. But what we did back in 1993 is totally different from what we do in the year 2009. We've had to rethink our approaches. Upgrading in 1993, export import. That's how everybody did it. 2009, I've got 100 terabytes. Do you want to export 100 terabytes? Do you want to import 100 terabytes? We do things differently because everything has changed over the intervening 16 years. So you have to constantly rethink. The best practices of 2 years ago are your worst practices of today, because everything is constantly evolving and changing. And that's why conferences like this are relatively important, because you're going to have people who are working in the field with the software continuously coming and talking to you about their experiences. And from the user group perspective, I would encourage all of you to consider doing that as well. It's the neat thing with the user groups is any one of you could come up here and talk to the audience at some point in time as well. But that's how we get this continuous rethinking. We hear about other people's experiences, what they've done. Continuous change. 11G Release 2 just came out. That's the good news. 11G Release 2 just came out. That's the bad news, right? Because now you have to upgrade. And what does an upgrade involve? There's the test process and go through QA, and we're going to have to develop some fixes for things that don't work the same and whatnot. It's just a fact of our life. In 1993, change was introduced much more slowly. In 1993, this technology called client-server computing was just becoming prevalent. Networks were being set up, and we were doing everything in client-server. In client-server, you had to install software on the end-user's desktop. And if you installed software on 100 end-user desktops, you were going to leave that software there for 6, 9, 12 months, because it was a pain to go out and update 100 desktops simultaneously. Change was a lot slower back then, even on the database side, because you couldn't change the database radically without changing the client application. So the fact that the client application was hard to update made the database change slower. Today, if somebody says, hey, I need this field on a form, you know that later that afternoon, that field is going to be on that form.